Stephen Yates is our regular guest on this program. He's a foreign policy expert with D.C. International Advisory. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Dana. Great to be back with you.
So it seems as though this issue with Benghazi, I'm seeing fewer and fewer headlines about this now. The issue hasn't gone away. There hasn't been any more progress. There hasn't been any answers given, but it seems as though this may be going the way of Fast and Furious.
That does seem to be trending in that direction. We have a few unusual circumstances at the moment that may not be indicative of where it goes long run. I mean, we do have the preoccupation with the fiscal cliff discussions. We have some reorganizing going on in the House and Senate post-election with new ranking members and some new chairmen of key committees. We have Ed Royce, who's going to become the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House. And when he assumes the gavel, perhaps he will choose to have investigations into things like this. But you're absolutely correct that the desire on the part of the administration and its surrogates and the media, as they talk about this, is to say, oh, well, what's all this partisan furor trying to attack poor Susan Rice, rather than focusing on why was she engaged in such political behavior as the ambassador to the United Nations, and at the same time entirely false.
I mean, it seems weird that it seemed as though, I don't know if they were just giving her a dry run for Hillary Clinton's seat, or if they wanted to hide behind Susan Rice and use identity politics as a way to swat away questions about Benghazi. Because I've never usually you put someone out there who's on a foreign affairs committee or something like that. You don't just randomly pick an appointed UN ambassador to kind of field questions on this. I've never seen it done before.
That's exceedingly unusual. And in terms of dealing with Washington issues at the highest levels, usually the White House would pick someone very close in town, not someone who's based up in New York and not someone who's far afield. But Susan Rice was a very early advisor to the Barack Obama campaign for president in the last cycle. In the years 2007 and 2008, she played a very prominent role. She's very, very close to Valerie Jarrett and other key insiders in the Obama White House. It's very, very likely that they picked her, as you thought, as an audition for a higher role in the foreign policy world in the second term, but also because she is known and thoroughly trusted, a complete part of the team, and would go out and deliver this message. And she did dutifully do what the campaign and the White House wanted.
And then they're trying to throw her under the bus while at the same time not throwing her under the bus by saying, well, somehow the talking points were changed. No one knows. No one. In the meantime, we have families of 4 Americans who are just sort of in limbo with no answers.
And most astonishingly saying she was never qualified to answer these questions.
Yeah, all at the same time. Then while telling people, well, don't mess with me. I hope it does not go the way of Fast and Furious, and we're going to keep an eye on all of the developments on this. I'm thinking after the first of the year, Stephen, that there could be some real push on this.
I think so. And also the world doesn't tend to stand still. And so there's still things going on. I mean, after all, of this talk about Susan Rice, how much talk has there been about her abject failure to resist the Palestinian issue coming to the General Assembly and succeeding?
Exactly.
And so her tenure and the administration's foreign policy across the board are still going to face key tests going ahead. We've got North Korea saying it wants to launch missiles. We've got the Iran nuclear program. A whole host of things are not going to sit and pause just because they say don't pick on Susan Rice.
Right. And speaking of the United Nations vote on whether or not they were going to recognize Palestine as a non-member observer or a non-voting observer, basically.
It's a completely insane title that no one outside of the United Nations would ever understand or respect. But yes, that's what it is.
And it seems just like it's symbolic, like a symbolic kind of one-finger salute to the United States and Israel.
Absolutely true. And, the frustrating part of this is there are a host of things around the world where the establishment in foreign policy would say our resistance to this is pure symbolism. And we would turn back and say, well, wait a minute. The symbolism is trying to get a fake state, fake recognition, and a fake international organization. Right. That's symbolism. But this is the train the foreign policy establishment has been trying to drive in this direction for a very, very long time. And maybe because of the distraction over things related to the campaign in Benghazi, they just weren't there at the switch to block this.
Exactly. And I wish that I think perhaps maybe a better job from our own administration, or at least people sympathetic to Israel, should kind of explain that a little bit better. I'm fascinated with how it can be recognized as a non-voting observer member state when it's not a state, has never been a state, never had its own currency, its own anything. And then, but even then, going down that road of logic, Stephen, couldn't you say then that Gaza's attacks on Israel have come from a non-voting observer member state then at that point?
Absolutely. But, I mean, that's the charade that is the United Nations, that is sort of the gobbledygook talk that we have in foreign policy communities. Reality is we've got these loose networks that are taking territory that belongs to someone else and waging war against real sovereign states. And, that's what we have to try to stop. But we've got this absolute numbing silliness at the United Nations. And frankly, I think Ambassador Bolton had it about right. We stopped these moves in the past because we were willing to say no money for organizations that engage in this silliness.
Yes,
and out of fear, they did adjust their behavior for the better part of the last 20 years.
And we're apparently still we're threatening to suspend aid to them. I'm still floored that we send so many millions of dollars to Hamas in aid.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And the whole aid question, I mean, I see a place for aid in a national security strategy. You got to have some common sense about measuring results and having accountability for the ultimate destination of funds.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just throwing money down a hole in Haiti that never seems to develop, or worse, giving money to areas that actually engage in war against us and our allies, even more inexcusable.
And there have been, to kind of sort of change it up just a little bit, there have been two particular areas. We have the ongoing protests in Egypt, which we'll get to in a moment. But then our neighbors down south, Mexico, they're rioting in the streets because of their new elections, which have ushered in a new Mexican president. Felipe Calderon is out, and Peña Nieto is in. And apparently a number of Mexicans think he is the devil, and they're just out protesting in the streets. Oh, how could you elect such a fascist? Give us some of the story on this.
Well, I mean, this is, unfortunately, we don't have a very informed or forceful discourse about democracy, what we stand for in supporting democracy around the world, and what the processes are. I mean, on the one hand, we've got a White House that will say that the Muslim Brotherhood must be accepted because they were elected in that process there. And at the same time, in Mexico, there's a process that's run, a candidate wins, and there's no statement about instability on a major border nation and trading nation with the United States about people accepting an outcome of a lawful election. If there wasn't a lawful election, we sure haven't heard anything about that in our media for the last several months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting how they pick and choose. And looking towards Egypt as well, they're trying to still rush through this constitution, through this that was pushed through by the drafting assembly. They're trying to rush this through, and you still have people out in the streets, and there's claims that the Muslim Brotherhood are paying individuals to attack protesters. Either it's going to get violent or it's going to fizzle out. I'm trying to. I don't know if this would spread though, because this seems to be antithetical to the protests which were behind Arab Spring, which seemed to be so much Muslim Brotherhood either inspired or facilitated.
Well, this is, I think, going to lead to more violence and more protests as long as the people of Egypt honestly struggle to gain more freedom. I mean, really what brought a lot of people out in support to topple Mubarak was a sense of taking control of their own fate. And in a very, very short period of time, this ideological and extreme organization is trying to grab all of it and actually offer people less choice and less control in a very short order. I think it has a demonstration effect in other areas affected by the broader Arab Spring. It probably sets a chill into the opposition movement in Syria. It's a chill across other areas where people are trying to make their way. And we, the United States, are largely silent about it, which means they have to stand alone against well-funded, well-armed, basically governments now that have emerged post-Arab Spring.
So much happening in the world. Stephen Yates with the DC International Advisory, DCIadvisory.org. Thank you, as always, for helping us keep a perspective on it.
Thank you.